Happy Odin's Day. Now today I want to talk about a runic theory I am developing. Hello. Now, during the initiation stage of my runic journey, which I'm kind of at a end stage of before I begin my next stage, there were some thought processes that came to me during encounters with some of the runes that I felt compelled at this sort of holding stage I'm in to sort of try and map it out a little bit, or to sort of see how the theory holds out, and to see if it satisfies or feels like it is a connection to the runes and to the poetic header, to the stories of the gods and the creation of the realms. And obviously, it's just like, let me make this very clear. This is a theory. It's a theory I've not come across thus far, and it feels like it is my own theory, and I don't have anything to sort of say, well, this is fact, or this is the approach you should take, because this is my interpretation from my journey, looking into or reconnecting to sources and power we may not be quite as well connected to as we think, or I say, it's a theory, and I could be wrong. You can argue with my theory. It's just pursuing a line of thinking that feels apt, feels close. Now, to begin with, in terms of like connecting to runes without a physical representation of the rune, it feels very much like Ginnungagap, the great void, the empty space at the beginning of the myths, before the world, before Midgard existed, certainly. There, we are told that there was this wide chasm, and to the north and south were Muspelheim and Niflheim, fire and ice, or what we could say is Kenaz and Isa. And for the beginning of the narrative, they're in a state of, I don't know, not doing anything much. However, on the side of Isa, of ice, there is the movement, the flow of water, of lagus, of power that drifts and drifts and drifts towards the center, towards fire, and where they sort of clash, there is creation. There is the creation of sort of rime and ice, more ice for some reason. Maybe it's the sort of, as the water moves, as a glacier moves. That's not the right word, but double check that. As there is a fall of in the ice. Some ice is still, I suppose, gonna hold its shape. But in this central ground, there is contact, there is creation. Now, around these 3 runes, below it, I place Algiers, because it does appear very much like a tree. It could represent Yggdrasil. Looking again at the stories, it's almost like Yggdrasil is beyond time, or at another layer of power or creation. So as ice and fire converge in the space, there is a harvest, Yera. And sort of from this harvest, there is the creation of life. Now, I don't have an answer to bring in how Undumbla, the cow, comes into being, or has any answers. But it does feel very much that this is the dynamic representation of Uruz coming to the harvest to release Emir, who initially is just like, is this the origin of Furisaz or Fala? And my current line of thinking is to go with Ofala. So Uruz and Ofala have this point of contact, and slowly Udumbla reveals or sort of licks away the rime and the ice to release Emir. Again, there's some vague area of what happens next. What do we make of Emir when we are told that sort of from his armpits a male and a female are born, Ingwaz and Burkana, and then from his foot or his legs, getting it on, there's also the birth of a 6-headed Jotnar. But one way or another, these 3 children are, with Emir, the creation of the Jotnar, Furisaz. And that's why sort of initially I was going to put Emir as Furisaz, but Emir is the ancestral origin of the Jotnar and their branch tribes. So this feels very much like Ofala, and then as he has his children, they become Furisaz, the tribes of the Jotnar. And that's where we get sort of the real sort of branching off and separation and creation of not just the continual line of the Jotnar, also including the birth of Odin and his brothers, and what leads to the creation of the Aesir. So at this point, it can then sort of bring into the map, if you like, of this story, perhaps Taiwaz for Tyr, definitely Ansus for Odin, or Odin and his brothers, and I include Fehu here for Frigg as this is at a point where things start to, I need to put more thought into it, I feel. I don't feel that I'm making a wrong sort of course. It just, there's perhaps a little bit more involved, and I'm just pursuing a line of thinking, and I'm still working on it, to be honest. Just want to make a record of it, and to pick people's brains if people want to comment. I'd also sort of say at this point that it feels very much that it's a massive omission for me that this six-headed giant doesn't get sort of mentioned again. And I associate it with Perthro, so chance or perhaps chaos is, I would angle towards a theory I sort of have toyed with, that this is from whom Loki is descended. Now obviously Loki is Jotnar, considered a seer, and yet is something more. And there's something, as I've talked about in a video about Loki, that what are Loki's motivations? Why does... There's a very much a long game in terms of the lead up to Ragnarok and the need to avenge something. And that brings me to where I want to sort of end this video for now, because sort of beyond Iwaz, the death of Emir, the creation of order, if you like, by Odin and his brothers, we get into another area of sort of a lot to map. However, if we come back to Perthro, the six-headed giant, being sort of one of the first children of Emir, and Loki being descended from that six-headed giant, then the death of Emir, the murder of Emir at the hands of Odin and his brothers to create order, is very much a very, very strong, very simple motivation to sort of undermine all the things that the Aesir create and do. In many levels, I say, before this moment of creation, there is things that exist, but there doesn't seem to be any one sort of ruling force. You could say it is happily chaotic. Free. It is free. And obviously by the creation of Midgard and Asgard and everything sort of being tied to rules in this creation process by Odin, it would make sense to me for the Jotnar, especially when they're excluded from places that are created, Asgard and Midgard, that they don't take that creation very well. And then sort of we have the conflict phase of what happens, what is the purpose of life. Perhaps in this conflict area, that's where I need to sort of put the final Elder Futhark runes, and I'm also putting thought towards younger Futhark and sort of some lines from the Havermal. One of the things I look at as a branch is Odin and his brothers the creation of manas by them is Geber, is a gift they give to the creation of mankind with Ask and Embla. And the Jotnar are bringing trouble and strife, challenge, which Hagalaz, now these, and sort of a lot of the other runes fit in between this phase. And at this moment in time, my ending rune is Wunjo, because it's the joy of creation, of life, perhaps even the journey of life, which I was struggling to put Rado into the equation. And yet when you start talking about something out loud on a video that is theorizing about things, you realize that there is a journey. There is a journey to get to Ragnarok. There is a journey made by Loki and the Jotnar and the Naglfar to bring their forces to clash with the Aesir. Now obviously this is missing out a whole load of other things, and again there is these words in the Havamal that almost sets the idea that there are runes we have as mankind, there are runes for the Aesir and other runes, and a lot of these runes we don't know, or it's for us to discover, to plunge into the well and to see if we can comprehend or learn. This is one fraction, one side of the runes, without access or knowledge of other runes that Odin makes a point of saying he knows. This brings everything back to the well, to the source, and how we can access it, or if we should access it, if we can even tap into and comprehend this sort of underlying layer of creation. But that's a theory, and please comment if you have anything to say. Probably going to tidy up this map of the runes that sort of vibrating in my headspace. It's a line of thinking. I don't claim to be an expert. I am still learning myself. It just seems applicable to apply it to the sagas, the stories we have. Anyway, thank you very much if you've listened to me theorize and waffle on, and I'll see you soon. Do take care. Goodbye.